every time Bill Mitchell entered the studio, it was an event. It was a major event. I mean, you know, and just loved it when he came in the studio. Of course, if he came in with another corporate leader, we were generally all asked to leave the room so that they could have their very frank conversation. But if Bill Mitchell liked the design, he would dance a jig in the studio.
Wow.
He would, you know, if he didn't like the design, you knew it as well. You know, he would have a colorful description of the design that may not have made any sense other than the fact he knew he didn't like the car. You know.
Yes. Do you recall any of them?
Well, if a car looked like purple piss, I mean, and you figure, you know,
that's not good.
Probably doesn't like it, you know. I mean, the car was a silver car sitting there, and he said it looked like purple piss. Well, yeah. So,
gotcha.
But he, yeah, he was very colorful. And you know, there are a lot of people talk about how out of bounds he was and over the top, and drove crazy cars and had unbelievable over the top, out of bounds 3 or 4 piece suits. But you know, he just would inspire a designer like no one else would. I just feel so lucky to have worked for him. You know, I'm told that he was politically very conservative. I never experienced any of that. All I know is that he is my hero.
That's awesome. Go on about that, because this is a guy who, you know, as you said, there's a side of Bill Mitchell that is pretty well known. Yeah. That wouldn't. It surprises me a little bit to hear you say that, but it doesn't surprise me. So can you share why?
Yeah, and I've heard some of the stories, you know, yeah. and I'm sure I've been sheltered from many of the stories, but the man just would inspire you, you know, when he came in the room and he talked about the design, or just by his actions, the fleet of cars he had, some of them were over the top, but he would just energize me. And I think most of the organization, there are some people that did not like him at all, but I just thought he was fabulous and inspired me, and is an inspiration to me today.
There's a photo of you shaking his hand, and I believe it's at the end of this summer program, if I'm right. Yeah. That is a classic. Ed, with a substantial bush, right? Your fro was good size there, and I think we pointed out to you had like a 2 or 3 inch wide leather band on your wrist.
You remember that photo in great detail. And I was wearing a double-breasted suit, a dark pinstripe suit, very elegant suit. And you know, there's a whole crowd of people, and Mitchell and myself were in the middle. You would have thought that there was a moat full of crocodiles in between, because we were both stretching so far to shake hands without getting close to each other. I mean, this was pre-corona, but we had self-distance ourselves.
You were safe distancing. And was that the first time you met him?
That was the first time I met him. And we're shaking hands, but at a real distance, both. And everyone in the background, their eyes are a little bugged out by this, and it's just a classic photo. I love it.
It is. We'll try and find it, and I know we can find it. And we'll include it so everyone knows what we're talking about. You've mentioned Chuck Jordan as well, another inductee in our Hall of Fame. Your thoughts on Chuck and his tenure?
Yeah, Chuck was, you know, Chuck had done so much through his career, from a young designer on up through the ranks, done so much, and had been an inspiration to so much, and was truly a great designer. And he was there to witness the way Harley Earl ran the shop and the way Bill Mitchell ran it. And he had pretty much modeled himself after them in many ways, but in a fresh California spin on that. By the time he got the job after Irv, the world had changed, and he couldn't really operate the way he had dreamed of operating all those years.
Mhm.
You understand? You know,
I do, but maybe our viewers don't. Right?
yeah.
Can you
So,
expound on it a little bit more?
so he wasn't able to build all kinds of flamboyant special cars for himself to drive. The rules had changed. He had to work in collaboration with people. He couldn't throw people out of the building the way
Mitchell did.
Mitchell would,
Yeah.
and I witnessed it, or fire people the way the Harley Earl would fire people, and because sometimes Harley Earl would fire someone, but they were really good, and they would hide that person in the basement or someplace where they knew Harley Earl wouldn't go for a period of time. But so those years, and they were difficult years for the auto industry too, that Chuck was running the place. And he so desperately wanted to bring back the flair that he knew design needed to have to be successful. And it was difficult for him to do that. And there were so many forces throughout the company that wanted to be very much a part of design, that it was so difficult for him.
We both were at that presentation in the Dome. Bringing Back the Fun was the title of it that Chuck brought back. That was his wish, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So there's two.
But you can't manufacture that. There's
Yeah.
something about that's got to happen naturally. You can't tell people to have fun or order to have fun.
So right. There's two of your predecessors. How did they influence your management style? What did you as you said, the rules have changed.
Yeah,
and obviously Wayne Cherry was a part of your experiences.
They all had an influence. Irv Verbicki, I never get the day we were standing near the executive offices, and I was an 8th level designer. I wasn't an executive or anything. And he told me, he pointed to those executive offices, and he said, you can learn a lot from those guys. You're serious. You can learn what to do and what not to do. And that always just stuck with me, So, I have studied the Harley Earl years to great detail and know it quite well. I feel as though I was a part of those years, although I wasn't. I worked for Mitchell in the last few years of his tenure, and with Irv and with Chuck Jordan and with Wayne. So I've learned. I have the advantage of learning from all of them, and what to do and what not to do. And I felt as though a big part of what I needed to do was to really bring back, the spirit, bring the artistic quality of design back to the company,